Welcome to Tabo Eminent Channel. In Washington, D.C., on June 9, 1893, the interior of ramshackle Ford's Theater collapses, causing the deaths of 22 people. The building, where President Lincoln was shot on April 14, 1865, houses hundreds of clerks employed by the War Department's Records and Pensions Division. An investigation determines the cause of the tragedy was a pier that had given way during excavation in the basement for an electric light plant. Rescue workers quickly arrived on the scene, toiling like demons to search for victims and to remove debris. Clerks recalled screams of co-workers. One witness said Civil War veterans who worked in the building were the wildest and craziest. In a panic, some employees jumped from the second floor, using an awning to brace their fall. Thanks for watching. Request you to subscribe the channel. Businesses and homes in the immediate area were used as makeshift hospitals. Anguished relatives rushed to the scene. Some onlookers watched events unfold from the rooftops of buildings. Plunged in a chasm of death, read a newspaper headline. A Washington Post reporter visited the home of a victim whose body was the last one recovered. "Say, mister, when is Papa coming home?" asked the tearful boy. "He will come home tomorrow, won't he?" One man thought there was a curse on the building since Lincoln's assassination. "If I had my way, Ford's Theater should be entirely demolished and the ground be forever left unbuilt upon," he told a reporter. Ford's Theater remained a federal office building until 1932. After undergoing extensive renovations, it was reopened as a theater in 1968. The National Historic Site underwent extensive renovations again in the 2000s. On the morning of June 9, 1893, tragedy struck at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C., not during a performance, but during renovations of the aging building. Once the infamous site of President Abraham Lincoln's assassination in 1865, the theater had since been repurposed as a federal office building, housing records and clerical staff for the War Department's Records and Pensions Division. At the time of the collapse, dozens of government workers and construction laborers were inside, unaware of the danger looming above and beneath them. As the day began, workers were making structural modifications to reinforce the interior. Without warning, the third floor gave way, crashing onto the second, which then slammed into the first. In just moments, the entire center of the building had pancaked, burying men beneath tons of bricks, timber, plaster, and dust. The collapse killed 22 people and injured more than 60, making it one of the deadliest peacetime building collapses in U.S. history at the time. Rescue efforts began almost immediately, with survivors clawing through rubble to pull out the injured. The chaos and carnage shocked the Capitol, and within hours, attention turned to what had gone wrong. An investigation revealed that cast-iron columns, commonly used in 19th century construction, had buckled under the weight of the building and the renovation materials. These columns, it turned out, were brittle and structurally insufficient for supporting the additional stress. Critics questioned the federal government's oversight of the project, and the collapse prompted a reassessment of construction standards for public buildings. In the years that followed, Ford's Theater was left empty, a grim monument to two great national tragedies: the assassination of a president and the preventable deaths of 24 civil servants. It wasn't until the 1960s that the building was restored and reopened as a museum and working theater, preserving its legacy while paying tribute to those who lost their lives there. Today, visitors to Ford's Theater not only learn about the night Lincoln was shot, but also the day the building itself became a tomb for the forgotten workers of a neglected past. In the heart of Washington, D.C., Ford's Theater stood as a solemn reminder of a nation's trauma. The place where President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in 1865. After that tragic night, the theater was deemed unsuitable for entertainment and was closed by the federal government. In time, the building found new life as a government office, home to the War Department's Records and Pensions Bureau. But by the late 19th century, the once grand theater had aged poorly. and workers were assigned to carry out repairs and renovations to shore up its structure. On the morning of June 9, 1893, clerks and laborers reported for work as usual. The day was warm and uneventful, and hundreds of people were at their desks or on the floors above, working on military records. Suddenly, without any clear warning, disaster struck. The third floor collapsed, and in a terrifying chain reaction, it crushed the second and then the first. The force was so great that huge timbers, bricks, and beams crashed downward in a deafening roar, creating a storm of dust, cries, and confusion. The collapse turned the interior of Ford's Theatre into a ruin. Survivors who were lucky enough to escape the falling floors described scenes of terror. People trapped under desks, limbs pinned by beams, and co-workers crushed beyond recognition. The rescue operation was chaotic and frantic, as workers, soldiers, and even bystanders rushed to remove debris with their bare hands. The building's walls still stood, but its heart had caved in. 22 people were killed, and scores of others were left injured, some maimed for life. It was one of the deadliest building failures the city had ever seen. In the investigation that followed, public outrage mounted. How could such a catastrophic collapse happen in a government building in the nation's capital? Engineers soon discovered the problem. Cast iron columns, chosen decades earlier for their economy and popularity, were brittle and prone to failure under heavy weight. They had cracked under the strain of renovation work, unable to support the loads of floors, archives, and equipment. Experts and newspapers criticized the lack of oversight and the failure to modernize old structures. The tragedy revealed deep flaws not just in engineering, but in public safety policy. Ford's Theatre, already burdened with the weight of President Lincoln's death, now bore the scars of a second catastrophe. For many years, the building stood silent, marked by history and loss. It was not until the mid-20th century that efforts to restore and preserve the site took hold. Eventually, it was transformed into a National Historic Site and working theatre, where visitors could both reflect on Lincoln's legacy and remember the lesser-known victims of 1893, the clerks, laborers, and veterans whose lives ended under falling floors in a forgotten federal office. Today, Ford's Theatre tells a layered story. It is a place of art, memory, and mourning, a space that echoes not just the gunshot that killed a president, but the groans of collapsing timbers and the cries of workers buried in dust. These overlapping tragedies make the theatre one of the most haunted and historically charged buildings in the United States.